But second half of childhood is when you come alongside them and you're building life together. So that at the end of the 65, 70, they have the tools and the resources, the skills, the know-how, the foundation to then go do life on their own and come back and ask you questions and, consult with you as needed and get support from you as needed. But there's never going to be a time quite like the 65, 70 again.
Mama says namaste.
Mama says namaste.
Making a family can be easy and fun.
Oh yeah, but raising a family can be a whole different story.
From spouses to kids to the crazy daily grind, life often directs us away from connection and more into reactive chaos.
If you're tired of that cycle and are seeking something beyond the picket fence blues, this is the show for you.
I'm Ashley.
And I'm Nathan.
And we're here to take you from chaos to clarity by bringing awareness and intention into your home, not waiting for one day, and highlighting how
the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us.
Take a deep breath in and let's start a brand new day. With Mama says namaste.
All right, welcome to another Mama Says Namaste podcast where I have an interview. And for those of you who haven't tuned in recently, just as an update, when I do an interview, you have access to it through the podcast. I also have a blog post that goes along with it where if you need to do a quick read, we can give you a summary as to what all we covered in there, as well as over on YouTube, we have video, and the video is in the blog post as well. So quick and easy, going to mamasaysnamaste.com, you get to see the blog, the podcast, and the video, and you can access all of those in multiple other ways as well. So with that, I want to welcome and introduce who I have on today, and that is Nellie Harden. So Nellie, you are a family and a life coach. And other than that, I'm just going to leave it very loose at that. I know we all oftentimes have a lot of different titles we can call ourselves, and you have multiple, including mom and wife, I know. So can you share a little bit about your story and what your passion is, what you're excited about being on here to talk about today?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be able to come on and have a wonderful conversation with you. And so, I am a wife and a mom and a family life and leadership writer and author and speaker. But all of that to say, I'm just a person out there that's trying to help parents raise the next generation with a foundation of worth, esteem, and confidence to launch them into life. I mean, that really is what it comes down to. And the background on that is in a simple story, because we all have the very complex story, right? But the simple story is I was a young woman that really didn't have this foundation when I left home to launch into life with. And especially when you're a young woman in that vulnerable state of, I don't know my worth and I don't have esteem and I don't have confidence, you end up chasing those things everywhere that you can. And that can lead down some really dark and difficult roads. And that's what happened to me. And then it led to decades, honestly, of healing. And in the midst of those decades of healing, I then went through a season of years of infertility and then a season of having 4 daughters in 4 years, which I am, now still raising with my husband. So, the pendulum swings all over the place, but having gone through the experiences I did, and then having 4 daughters that I'm, the architect of, I call parents architects because we are planning and designing and building the beginning of somebody else's life, which is a very humbling experience. It's a very huge responsibility. And it's not just about getting them physically survive to 18 so that they can, go off into the world and be released. It's really about building them so that you can launch them out into the world. And my background before I was dealing with the messy human realm was in the animal realm. And so I used to work with marine mammals and then land animals and things like that. But what was so important about that time and where I see its place so fervently and clearly in the work that I do today is in the animal realm. You can really see, the black and white purpose of parenthood, right? It's really to prepare them for life. You are raising other people. You are raising adults. We're not raising kids, right? And so we're raising other people, and there's these stages within that time. And it's so beautiful to have been able to work in the animal field and then come and start working over a decade ago in the much more complex and messier human realm, but have those, that black and white structure within it. And so, that's kind of, where I am today and how I got to be where I am, and just looking at my daughters and saying, okay, we have this much time in order to be the highest impact, level that we can as parents in your lives, to build this foundation of worth, esteem, and confidence to launch you out into the world. And that's what I'm doing today.
That is beautiful. And I love the analogy of us being architects. We've talked about for my family having 3 daughters, ages 10 to 16, we've said this is the decade that we're launching them into their independence.
Yes.
Not that we're just booting everybody away at 18. It's not that at all. But if the rest of the world is going to legally see them as an adult, can they stand on their own 2 feet as an adult? Can they be self-sufficient? And yes, we've talked a lot about just in our unschooling, our desires for unschooling is to teach them life skills and how to be kind to humans. And that's the essence of what we want to do. So you have in there, and you've already alluded to it a little bit with this. So what's the significance of this 6750? I see 6750 on your website. 6,750 days. What is this?
It's actually just flipped. It's 6570, but
sorry.
in there. No.
6570, yes.
Yep. So 6570, that's how many days are in 18 years. And so it's really just a great reminder. And I had this huge clarifying moment early on. My husband was not doing well. He had, still has, but he had a heart condition that he almost didn't make it through. And my kids were 4, 2, 2, and newborn at that time. And so my daughters today are 18, 15, 15, and 13. So we're, right there in this time that you are as well. But when they were so young, we had to have some really difficult conversations with them. We had to have them do difficult things. Because we didn't know what the future was going to look like. And I grew up, my dad passed away when I was just 1.5. And so I knew that world, and I could speak into that some if something were to happen. And we were very much facing that possible reality back then. And so it was such an eye-opening time for me to be able to have real conversations with my 4-year-old, age appropriate, of course, but real, and then have her support and insight into what was going on. And even to an extent, my 2-year-olds, not so much my newborn, of course, at the time, but we were sitting in the waiting room during his final heart surgery that he's had, most recent, I guess, and just looking at them and saying, oh goodness, okay, so this is how many days that we have. Some of them have already gone by with my 4-year-old and 2-year-olds, and, we're close to that with my newborn, but 6,570, that is my highest impact zone that I have for them. And I will always be their mom. I will always be their parent. But for the reasons that you were saying, this launching pad, right? Especially in the second half of childhood, first, parenthood in the 6570 is really in 2 big blocks. There's the first half of childhood where you are building life for them. You are spoon feeding them life. You are telling them, this is your friend, this is your home, this is your food, this is your outfit, this is who you're going to, love, this is, your grandparents, what have you. Second half of childhood, and there's a massive transition that happens sometimes abruptly and sometimes over a long period of time within that. I call it the great transition that happens in that middle of childhood, because it's sneaky and it can, if you don't know it's coming, if you don't know it's there, it can be really, really hard and tumultuous on the parent-child relationship and on the parent individually and the child individually.
Mm.
But second half of childhood is when you come alongside them and you're building life together, so that at the end of the 65, 70, they have the tools and the resources, the skills, the know-how, the foundation to then go do life on their own and come back and ask you questions and, consult with you as needed and get support from you as needed. But there's never going to be a time quite like the 65, 70 again. And I don't say that to give pressure to parents or to say, you got to be perfect today. Or, when I say wake up with intention in your parenting every day, it's not, I need to do this, 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 and this, and give them every experience and, make sure that they're learning this. No, it's just wake up with the intention and say, wow, what can I breathe into this child today? What can I learn from this child today? Right. And it's this beautiful partnership in the second half of childhood that you get to have with them that's different than the first half. And so that's where the 65, 70 comes from. And I really encourage people to figure out how much time you have left in the 65, 70 for your, each individual child. And, my oldest is 18 now. She's going to college just in 1 month. And so, we're really toward the end of that right now. As I'm speaking, she's in France and she is, living her big life and she's going around, and we've really tried to, and every child is different, but for her specifically, speaking into her personality, her learning styles, her love languages, all of those things, we have been able to build as best a foundation we can of worth, esteem, and confidence in her that fits her, that she can stand on, lean on, launch from for the rest of her life. And now, of course, we're doing it for the others as well. But that's the significance behind the 65, 70.
Wow. And it really does make it real when you do that and you do the math. I just did my daughter Clara, who's 16, and she has 638 days left before she is considered a legal adult.
Yeah.
We're in the 600s. I mean, we're not talking much time here at all.
Yeah.
And I know it can be super eye-opening. I mean, my husband used an example when we first hit the road traveling. We've been traveling for a while, had been having some frustrations with one daughter who was just choosing to not step up into her awesome. And we had a conversation, and my husband he calculated exactly how many days we had been traveling, how many days we had been struggling through this situation with my daughter, and just brought it to her attention. We've been on the road now, and it was, like 400 days or something like that. And it's like 400 days of us having this conversation. How many days do we want to do it? And she was 6 years old at the time. She's 13 now. She still references that time that daddy picked apart how many days she'd been working on the same topic, and it just hit her in a whole new way. And so often, I mean, you talk about, we're parenting regardless, but when we add a little intention, what can we do with it? And sometimes it's that doing a little bit of calculation can really make that come to as a priority and stand out.
It can. Absolutely. It's funny you say that. So my twins are 15. We're doing the whole driving and permits and everything this summer, and doing it with twins. I've done it before with my oldest. I'll have to do it again with my youngest, but doing it with twins, just like everything with twins, is different. Right. And so we had to have that same kind of tallying up conversation the other day, because I was telling them, listen, in this 6 months that we have, and we live in North Carolina, so that's how long they have a permit here. I have to teach you, let's just, rough it out and say 100 things. If we keep cycling over the first 5 things and wasting all of this time because you're putting up these emotional walls because you don't like to be told, right, what to do when you're driving. And if we keep cycling through these first 5 things for 6 months, you won't be able to do what you want to do, which is get your license later on. And so helping them dice out and be like, okay, I need to get through these things so I can work on these things and these things. It was eye-opening for them too, and be like, okay, I can't just keep cycling through learning these same 5 things. There's so much more I have to do. But yeah, it really helps them, especially because they don't have that frontal lobe developed yet, that logical thinking, critical thinking fully developed yet. It helps so much to give them systems and some concretes and some numericals.
Oh, yes. Yes, for sure. And you've talked about, you've said it multiple times now, and I know it's a foundational framework for you. Worth, esteem, confidence. Can you speak a little bit on that? That seems to be a critical foundation. I definitely appreciate it. So can you elaborate a little bit more about, I feel like I can easily pull an idea for worth and confidence a little bit more than the esteem. So can you go into all three of those for me?
Yeah. So as you know, I particularly work with young women, but when I work one-on-one with people, families raising young women, both the parents and the daughters, but when I'm doing all of my, speaking, writing, I'm speaking to general. So whether you have young women or young men, I'll probably say she and her, but if you have young men, it's fine too. So when we are launching our kids out into the world, I think we can all agree that giving them a sense of self-worth and self-esteem and self-confidence, which are three different things. I think in our language, especially in Western culture, they can be used synonymously, but they're three very different things. And so but I look at it like a three-tiered cake, if you will, a three-tiered foundation. So worth is that bottom, big, thick foundation. And without that, you can't have esteem, which is value and appreciation for self. That's the next one right there. And then if you don't have that, you can't have belief in yourself, which is the confidence piece. Okay, so we want to build this for them, which is all well and good. And you can say those words and be like, yeah. But it's kind of like a cloud. You go to grab it and you just go through it. You don't have structure to build those things. It's much easier to focus on, are they getting good grades, right? Are they in the sport and are they in the extracurriculars, whatever, because they're tangible things that you can literally check off a box for, right? And it's much harder with worth, esteem, and confidence, even though they are leagues more important, I can argue, than any of those other things. And, I say, it's what good is an A in calculus if they are breaking apart as a human being on the inside, right? And so we want to establish that. And sure, if they get an A in calculus or whatever of those other tangibles, that is great. But if they're doing it living from the inside out, not the outside in. And so worth and esteem and confidence, it's really important to give a structured framework on actually how to build that. So let's just look at worth, for example. So worth is going to be your 5 needs. And every human, you and I, all of our kids, every human that's ever existed really has these 5 needs. But during adolescence, especially the second half of childhood, where that frontal lobe is having all those massive connections, it looks like an electrical storm in there with all the connections that are happening and the framework that is being laid. These needs are just abundant and they're exploded for them. And those needs are to be seen and heard and loved and belong and have a purpose. And so if you really look into these things, every issue that we see our young people having today, and let's face it, a lot of adults don't have foundations of worth either. Many. I know I didn't. I had to build it within my adulthood. And it is so much harder to build these foundations in adulthood than if they are built during childhood, because you think about it like cement, right? We have a house that's being built across the street from us right now. And, they just poured the cement foundation the other day. It's liquid. It's very formable. You can push it here, push it there, right? That's what their brains are like, and their personalities and their lives are like during adolescence. In adulthood, it is cured. And so, meaning it's very hard. So in adulthood, if you want to change those things and change your foundation, you need to take a jackhammer to this, and it's painful and it's hard, right? And it's much easier to do it and help them through and building this foundation when they're in this very much more moldable adolescent period. But looking at those 5 needs, let's look at the opposite of those, right? And if they're not seen, they feel invisible. And there's a lot of young people out there that are feeling very invisible today.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're not heard, they're feeling ignored, which, depending on the person, can even feel sometimes worse than being invisible, because that means people know I'm here. They're just choosing not to listen to me. Right.
Right.
And that's so hard. And then, of course, there's loved and there's unloved, or even hated, right? People can feel, whether it's true or not, but they can feel like they're hated. And then there is belonging, right? And then the opposite of that, the other side of that pendulum, is to be rejected.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is to have a purpose or not have a purpose. Like, why? Why am I here? What's the point? Right. And these are the things that I'm hearing through so many young people today that are having, the mental health struggles and just the day-to-day struggles, that we have too, whether they're mild to moderate to severe. They fit somewhere in there. And so I really believe the best way to change the world is through a living room, right? Is through your living room, through my living room, through my neighbor's living room, etc. It's in the family unit. And so if we can help parents understand, first of all, what's going on in the brain, it's being shaped. Your child that is 16, even though they look like an adult, they are physiologically not an adult yet in that brain at all. And so there's so much molding that still is yet to be done right there. And so if we can help parents understand that a little bit more and help them feed into helping their child establish these needs from the inside out. They don't need to go and find who will listen to me, who will, see me, who will love me and everything from the outside. That's a part of it, but it's third, right? Really, first is spiritual, second is self, and then third is the outside world, right? Because we don't want them just chasing these things everywhere out in the world. We want them standing on a foundation from the inside out. I know that I'm worth it, right? If we could teach our children to know their worth instead of chase it, they will be different people. We won't have the 20s experience that so many go through, that tumultuous time, because they will have a leg up on life and be able to know their worth and go out there in the world and affect it in only the way that they are designed to do, right? The world is waiting for their awesome. I love, she wasn't playing it. What did you say? Playing into her awesome, living up to her awesome.
Living up to her awesome.
Yeah, exactly. She has a specific, an incredible awesome that is, the world is waiting and ready for.
Right.
And so if we can help them live into that, live into their gifts and talents and whatever that is, and live into their awesome, then we can give them such a foot or leg up in life. So practical wise, you could just look at your, let's just take Scene, for example. If they walk into a room, actually look up, give them eye contact, right? Eyes are the passageway to the soul. That's not a saying for nothing. Looking in eye contact is really important. So just look at them and use their name. The brain actually has neurotransmitters that react when your name is said that don't react other times. It brings a certain air of attention and understanding and honesty to the room whenever your name is said. So it could be one of my daughter's names is Trinity. And so she walks into the room. I actually look up from whatever I'm doing and say, "Hey, Trinity, how are you? What you been doing? What have you been doing?" And then we get to have a conversation, but she knows just from that very, very simple act. I know that I walked in and someone saw me. They recognized who I was. They said they saw or said my name, and they're interested in me, right? They are being seen. And then it could go on even to much deeper levels of having one-on-one time and getting to know your child on, in that intimate space and what their interests and desires and dreams and struggles are, and having that as well. But from the very, very simple, just looking at them and saying their name when they walk into a room kindly, not like robotically, and weird, but being kind. And then also going deeper with those and peeling apart the layers to really see them for who they are and who they're trying to become. So it's really a beautiful thing when you break apart the worth. And then the esteem is all about getting to know themselves. It's a relationship with self that I value and appreciate self. Relationships are built out of truth and trust. And so your self-esteem is all about building that relationship of self. And you can do that. How do you build trust with yourself? You understand, and again, their neural network is all haywire right now. And so giving them a structure, a thinking structure to build trust in themselves is really important so that the behavior that they have is actually going to be in line with who they are trying to become and the outcomes that they are seeking, instead of just going from thought to behavior, right? You and I and everybody, we go from thought to feeling, to decision, to behavior. And that can happen in a nanosecond, even faster. But if we can help them break that down, understand their values, understand who they're accountable to, understand some self-accountability, and break, I call it the HALT cycle for a reason. Like, hold on, let's think about this for a second. Okay, now let's move on and make sure whatever behavior you're about to do is actually in line with who you're trying to become and a result that you're actually seeking. And so that's an entire part that I teach there. And then confidence is all about giving them the tools and strategies, emotional, physical, mental, in order to get to where they want to go. So of course I can't, that's over about 40, 50 teachings that I do. So I can't do it all here, but that is essentially, it's giving structure to the more profound, but oftentimes boundaryless, right? Pieces of worth, esteem, and confidence that our kids need, but we're searching, okay, that's great, but how do I do it?
Oh, I love that. And just some simple tools. I mean, that simple thing of acknowledging a child by name when they come into the room and looking up from your phone. And I mean, that can make such a big impact. And oftentimes I think we can feel like we're so far gone, so far lost or disconnected. It's like, well, what do I do? And don't ever discount how something that small can make such an impact. I love that you've listed, seen, heard, loved, belonging, and purpose, because that's a 5-point barometer there. When your child comes in and is going off in any way, I talk a lot about personality styles and things that can trigger more reactive behavior. We all can be triggered by different things, but when our specific fears, things that kind of are anti-motivators come up, we can react. And so if I see a kid coming in and reaction, even if I went through that 5-point checkpoint, okay, are they feeling seen right now? Are they feeling heard? Are they feeling loved? Do they feel like they belong? Do they have a feeling of purpose? Right there, I've got a direction for how to connect. I love that. Okay, so then I've got two curveballs in here.
Okay.
One is my child just wants to be a kid, especially when she or he starts seeing, okay, 18 is looming. My parents gave me the number of how many days I have left to get my act together. And I just want to have a fun time. I don't want the responsibility. How do you open that door that it's not really an option here?
We are getting to the end of the runway, guys. So first of all, fun and joy and happiness, all of those things are part of the package, because we want them to have joy in life, and helping them understand the difference between joy, that is underlying tone all the time, and happiness, which is situational. I can be happy and not happy and happy and not happy all within 1 minute, right? But joy is underlying. And so I just want to have fun, explore that, get curious about that as a parent and say, well, what does that mean to you, right? What does that look like to you? Can you tell me why, you're doing this and how you're going to do this, right? Okay, great. You just want to have fun. You just want to, I don't know, skateboarding just came to mind for some reason. So you just want to go out and you want to do skateboarding. Awesome. Okay. So what does that look like to you? How much time do will it require for your fun level, to be this week? Because you still have responsibilities, and responsibilities are just part of life. In our house, we have responsibilities before recreation. That is a saying I say all the time: responsibilities before recreation. I want you to have as much rec time as you want, but your responsibilities need to be done to a point that you can be proud of them. And I'm sure to say that you can be proud of them, not me, right? Of course, I want to be proud of them too, but I want them. One of my daughters has bathrooms in our house, and I want you to be proud of the bathroom cleaning you did. As much as you don't like it, of course, no one in the world loves cleaning bathrooms, right? But well, no one I've ever met anyway. And but can you look at that and say, I did my best, right? Not, I did mediocre, I checked the box, I did a little swirly or whatever. I did my best is what you're going for, right? Because I do my best every day in trying to take care of our home, take care of you, take care of my job, my responsibilities, my passions, right? But I need you to learn how to do your best and be proud of yourself too. And it starts with the little things that, Karate Kid, the wax on, wax off. And in the new one, he's like putting his coat on the hanger 95 times in a scene and dropping it, all of that. I was like, it's the little things that add up to the big things, right? And so just teaching them and really massaging that muscle of joy and work ethic with them, and then leaving a wide breadth for fun and joy and breeding that. But that work ethic has to come in there, because I've seen way too many times, way too many times, these kids that, oh, I just want them to be a kid. This is, they'll never have this time in their life again. So true. They will never have this training zone again in their life.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
And so then they are released out to the world, and now all of a sudden they're 28, 29, 32, 40, and they are like, I don't know where the time went. And, I'm still doing the job that I did when I was 18 because I don't know what else to do. Right. And I see it happen over and over and over again. So yes, they will never have a time like this ever again in their life. So be intentional with it and use it and have so much fun with it, right? This is a super fun time. It's also a training zone for life. So use both of those.
Right. You can so use the training zone of adulthood to introduce the fun parts of adulthood as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, as the girls have gotten older, it's been so fun to learn from them and to, learn things about topics I was not interested in. I know more about snakes than I ever would have ever thought I even wanted to. And I've learned so much from them though. And yeah, we've been able to now add in the fun things as an adult as well. Okay, so then my last question in this is that, okay, so we can understand how to motivate our kids. I have to also recognize the outside influences, and not always even just outside. Sometimes it's under our own roof. It's parenting differences. And you can have parenting differences even with a happily married couple where they're both, one parent is very lax with the way the child is being raised. The other one wants to be very authoritarian. Or you have a divorced family where you have one whole household runs completely different than the other. How can you stay true when your child is already slipping away, out of your grasp, not just with you being that influence, but you have now the external influence of peers, of another parent that you may not see eye to eye with. How can you navigate that, especially if you've got a child that says, well, they're functioning and doing it in this way, and you're going, and I don't agree with that.
Yeah. So this could be a 3-hour podcast in and of itself. And
I know,
so
we're already stretching it because there's so much you can cover here. The teenage world is beautiful, isn't it?
It is. It's very colorful, multifaceted. Okay. So let me, go answer this question in a couple of different ways here. So first of all, if you are a married couple, that's going to look different than if you are divorced or separated. And also in the divorced and separated world, it really depends on the degree of co-parenting happening versus that house and this house, right? Because I've seen and dealt with both. And but if you are a heavy co-parenter in a separated or divorced family or a married couple, one of the things that I really recommend is coming together as parents before, whenever possible, before you are addressing the kids. And I always say no decisions in discussions. And what I mean by that is, if you are, mom and dad and the kids or whatever, you're all sitting around and you're having this talk, and then one parent pipes up and says, okay, well, this is what's going to happen. And then the other parent is like, I definitely don't agree with that, but I don't want to say that right now because then we don't look like united front. And then there's resentment that piles up. And then after it, the kids leave and one parent's looking at the other with the toe tapping and being like, definitely don't agree with that. I don't know what just happened. You just steamrolled me, right? And then there's animosity and all this stuff that builds up there. So if that happens, one of the greatest things you can just do is say, okay, well, we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to get back with you about this, right? So it's okay. There doesn't have to be a decision right there for whatever is happening. And if it needs to happen, then it's probably not a good decision anyway. This is when one of your children walks up to you in a crowd of people, including maybe their friend, is like, can I have a sleepover at so-and-so's house? And one parent is like, oh yeah, sure. And the other parent's like, no, I don't want them to have, a sleepover over there. Right. And so my kids know, like, do not ask me a question, a permissive like a permission type question when there's other people around. That is a personal affair, and we can talk about that privately. And then we can go as parents, we can go and get our head in the game and get on the same page, and then go and approach the child. So no decisions and discussions with the kids. That's for parents to get on the same page with, and then approach the kids about. And last night, this even just happened in my living room because one of my daughters wanted to, we finished watching a movie. She's like, can we just watch a show right before bed? Like just 10 minutes of a show. And my husband's like, no, we're going upstairs. It's 10 o'clock. It's time to go up. And my youngest daughter, she's 13. She goes, I didn't ask you, Dad. I want to ask Mom. And I was like, I was like, guys, that game doesn't play, and I said, we are on the same page. And so if that's what, Dad is saying right now, then that's what happens. Now, if I didn't agree with that, then I would have talked with him afterwards and been like, okay, can we just get on the same page about that? But we have had that discussion before where we make a hard boundary. So I was fine with him saying that because we've been on the same page and had those discussions before. But your kids will try and play you 100%. They're going to try and play you. They know I go to Dad if I want something to eat. I go to Mom if I want, some different entertainment or this or whatever, whatever it is for your family. So get on the same page as parents and then address the kids. If you are in a situation where divorced or separated, and it's really just a separation of that family and that environment and this family and this environment, as the parent that's trying to, build these foundations of worth, esteem, and confidence, trying to be intentional, trying to be directional in this parenting gig, and the other one's just like, a Ferris wheel over there. And that looks really fun and pretty. And I just want to stay over there. Be vulnerable with your kids. Being vulnerable is one of the absolute tools that you have to use to build this foundation. This foundation is built with 4 tools, and that is to be, you need to be vulnerable. You need to have resilience. You need and build resilience in them. You need to have discipline, and you absolutely need to have vision and where you are and where you're going. And so having those tools with you is really important. Just sitting down and being like, listen, I know, like, I want to go play. I just want to go and do all the fun things. I want to press the life easy button, but life isn't like that. And you know that your dad or your mom, whoever is the, the fun place, quote unquote, over there, you know that they've had their struggles too. And I don't want that for you. And I want to give you the tools and resources in order to truly stand and go and do you're awesome, to use your word, right? Go and do your awesome, because I know you have so much to give this world and to give yourself. And I want to see that happen. And I know that over there, it's not going to happen that way. So I want to work with you over here. And if you want to go over there sometimes and let your hair down and what have you, that's cool too. And guess what? We can do that over here too. We can absolutely have joy and have fun and do all the things. And I want you to know your other parent. If you start putting up walls, that's, another part of this puzzle. If you start putting up walls against another parent, it can get really, really choppy. And I've dealt with this in my own personal life, right? If you have a relative that you don't agree with or has really wronged you in some way, but then you start putting walls up around, of course, if it gets really dangerous, yes, that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about if they've wronged you and you want to put up walls. But for them, it's really important for kids to know their relatives, right? Where did I come from? Right now, our family's doing this whole ancestry thing. And there's good and bad and ugly and everything in between in there. But it's still important to know where they came from. These people that were in the 1900s, the 1800s, the 1700s that didn't know it, but they were preparing the way for you by their decisions. And so try not to, if it's possible, not to put up walls, but just healthy boundaries around your child and their interactions with the other family members that they might come into contact with. But I hope that helps a little bit. I was tripping over words because there's so much to say and I'm trying to get it small and concise, but yeah. It's a lot of, I call this, time a gauntlet for a reason. There's a lot of tricky places in there. But if you partner with your child, you can do it together. I promise you. Just be vulnerable and open with them.
Yeah, you mentioned, vulnerability, discipline, and vision. And I think of all of those as things I want from my kids. If I want that from my kids, am I emulating it? So those opportunities for being honest. And I sometimes in our desire to show that we're in control or that we've got this, we can gloss over those aspects of our own lives and not share those with our children. But the more that we can be open with them, because like you said, yes, it is a different stage, the second half of our parenting than it is in that first half. And I mean, and to be honest, then the next stage, where we have children, creating new relationships, potentially getting married, potentially having children, things like that, that's a whole other stage. The grandparent stage is another one. We have so many seasons in our lives and they all come with their own messiness and complexities. But it's not just us managing these children. It's us discovering them alongside them. And the more we're willing to do that with ourselves in the process and be open and honest about where we are and where we're struggling, it can create such a beautiful relationship that then does, go into adulthood. Yes. Oh, okay. So there's so much we've covered here. Thank you so much for being on. And like you've mentioned, you've got a lot of resources then for walking people through those teenage years and some tools to equip them. And yes, I'm in the all daughters world as well. So there's a lot of intricacy that goes into raising a young woman. And that being said, a lot of the principles and the things we've discussed today are definitely universal when it comes to children in general and not specific to females. We want that worth, esteem, and confidence built in our males just as much, so that they can come to these relationships in a beautiful way as well, males and females alike. So with that, last things, I want people to know where they can come and learn more about you, any kind of tool or resource you have, as well as just your last tip. Maybe if you've got a parent that's saying, okay, I feel like things are too far gone. I feel like I've lost my teen now. What can I do to get back? Like, what's my first step of hope that I can make this relationship work? So
I would say your very first step is to have a really honest conversation and be vulnerable with them, because they can't learn vulnerability unless you're vulnerable first. We're the architects. We are planning, designing, and building, right? We're the leaders. So, we want to love and lead our children in a way that then teaches them to love and lead themselves before they leave home, right? And even like you were saying, it's not too late. Even if they have left home, just have a vulnerable conversation with them. I've heard plenty of stories where, sometimes people's first 30, 40, 50 years, they had really tumultuous relationships with their parents. And then they sat down and they had a really vulnerable discussion with them, and things started turning around, and they saw their parents in a different light. They saw, wow, they were really doing the best they could with what they had at the time, right? And I never saw it from there because I was only seeing through my pain so many times, right? But just be vulnerable with your kids. Let them know where your heart is. Let them know the dreams that you have, for them too. I just want you to know how incredible you are, right? And what can I do? Is there ever a time that I didn't help you or didn't help you feel seen or heard, right? Because then if they tell you that, then it might have been a time that you didn't even know, wow, I really didn't intend to make you feel that way, but now I know, so I can do better. But if you don't have those vulnerable and open conversations, then you can both go about kind of living in these separate but together worlds. And that's not how this training zone can happen, right? You think about any sort of training, you are there with your trainer one-on-one, you are talking, they're showing you how to do things, you're trying it, you're failing better, you're getting better, right? And that's what this training zone, this adolescent time period is about. So it's never too late. Be vulnerable. And one of the things that we always say in our house and teaching them, right, because this is a gradual passing of the baton of their own lives at the end of the 65, 70 is discipline yourself so others don't have to. And so we talk about that a lot, right? And so when we do have to step in and discipline means teaching, by the way, I'm not talking about consequences. I'm not talking about punishments. I'm talking about teaching. And so when we have to step in and have these teaching moments with them, and you can just say, well, we saw that you weren't disciplining yourself. And so I need to step in and I need to help you help with the discipline now, because we were teaching you how to discipline yourself so others don't have to. And by others, that means you, it means the world, it means friends, it means life circumstances, right? So that's where I will leave you off. And everything that I have can be found. I love to keep things simple because, the world's complicated enough. And so nellieharden.com is where you can find the resources, the masterclasses, the communities that you can connect to. Everything is on nellieharden.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being on. Again, just reiterating those, if anything else, just think of these 5 words. Are you feeling seen? Are you feeling heard? Are you feeling loved? Do you belong? Do you have a sense of purpose? And that's the questions to ask yourself. And that's the questions to think through when you're interacting with your teenager. And the more that we can celebrate all of this together, learn how to be good roommates, kind people, learn to interact with one another, the more we can celebrate how the uniqueness in each of us strengthens all of us. Namaste. Thanks for being on.
Oh, thank you so much.
3. Up with the rising sun, already on the run. Mama says namaste. Life is a tangled mess, and you don't have to stress. Mama says namaste. 'Cause today I will stand up and be all the change that I want to see in this world. Boys and girls, you gotta have to stand up to be free. Oh, namaste. says namaste.